Hi, I'm Evelyn Walker, and I'm going to show you how to make cold porcelain. Cold porcelain is a clay you can make at home fairly inexpensively. It air dries, so you can work into it any other things that you want to build with. It's an extremely useful clay, so let's learn how to make it. Here are the things that you will need. You're going to need 1 cup of corn flour, cornstarch. I'm going to use cornstarch in this situation. You're going to need 3/4 cups of PVA glue, or school glue will work just fine. That's what I'm going to be using. As you can see, I bought the least expensive variety possible. You're also going to need 1 teaspoon of baby oil. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar. And you're going to need 1/4 cup of water. The different purposes of all these things, if you break this recipe down, you can find that there are substitutes for each of the items involved. People make them different ways. You need something. Both starch and cornstarch are proteins that are gonna settle and become sticky together, and then once it dries, it's gonna harden to be an extremely hard medium. The baby oil is to keep it from cracking as it dries. Every time I've made it, it's been to varying degrees of success keeping it from cracking. So you can play around with this to get different kinds of textures if you like the way the cracks look. If it's not destroying your object and just creating a texture, it can be a good thing. So play around with that. You can also use petroleum jelly. The white wine vinegar is to keep your clay from growing mold afterwards, because with the starch or protein substance of some kind, it's going to be a nice home for extra friends later on, and if you don't want that, you got to use something to keep them from living there. So you can use white wine vinegar or lemon juice. Anything acidic probably will work. I've only used lemon juice and white wine vinegar. The PVA glue, well, I'm using school glue. PVA glue would probably work better. But this is a very low cost recipe. Something really quick. Oh, you also need lotion, and this is to keep it from drying out before you want it to dry out. But I'll show you how to put everything together. So this is what happens when you mix all of your ingredients together. And what you're going to do is turn the heat on to a very low temperature. Well, it's not quite halfway. It's above simmering as well. You're going to have to judge for your own stovetop needs. But this is what it looks like on mine. Maybe some experimenting is in order. So the consistency is still very liquid. But you're gonna need to keep scraping constantly. Don't walk away from this for a minute, because it'll all stick to the bottom and then it will burn and your whole thing will be ruined. It's really important not to use a pot that you ever plan on using for food ever again. It's got to be a pot that you've designated for this purpose only. I made the mistake of using a pot that was coated with Teflon on the bottom. I don't know why I did it, but anyway, it ruined it. There was rust everywhere. You don't want to eat that. Be sure to buy a pot that is for this purpose only. What's happening is it's starting to change texture, but it's not quite there yet. I'll be back when it starts to change. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is that well, first of all, it's very difficult to do this with one hand, but it's begun clumping up, and I made the executive decision to just turn the heat down just a little smidge. That's because when it starts thickening up, it begins to do so very quickly, and you want to be on top of it. You don't want the heat to be up too high while it's gaining momentum and clumping. This can cause it can be just a very touchy texture type thing. So that's why I wanted to show you the way it's behaving now, so that when you make your very own, you can understand what's happening. Okay, it's just about clump time. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, this is what has happened. When everything has clumped up, it's really only been like a minute or 2 minutes since the last clip, and it's already become this like horrible consistency where it seems to be partly liquid and also partly solid. So you take it off the heat at this point, and you give it a few seconds because it's still hot. But you're going to reach in and you're going to start kneading it together. So this is your clay. You've taken it out of the pot. It's still a little bit warm. You need to knead it until it becomes room temperature. Otherwise, it's going to cool unevenly, and you're going to get a texture that is less than desirable. Squirt some lotion onto your surface before you start kneading, because that's going to act like flour for bread dough. So you keep kneading until it cools down. Once it's cooled down, though, you're ready to start molding. A little bit about the texture of this is that it's kind of rubbery. It's less fluid than regular clay. It can be difficult to get to stick to itself, but with some tweaking of, you know, maybe the recipe if you want, you can really get this to be anything that you want it to be. It can be extremely versatile and useful. Once you have it in the shape that you want, you leave it to dry for a few days until it's entirely dried out. You'll know what that is like. You can see all these cracks in it. This is because the recipe that I used for this one was a little less soft than the one that I'm showing you now. These cracks existed while I was molding this nose, but they became more exaggerated as the nose dried. It's something that I think is interesting, and it doesn't affect the structural stability of the nose, so it could be something worth exploring in the future. To store your clay, you want to fill a plastic bag with lotion. You want to cover the clay with lotion, and you want to put it in that bag for safekeeping until you're ready to use it all up. And I wouldn't recommend keeping it for more than a week, because at that point it starts losing some of its best qualities. This is called Porcelain, and I hope you find it quite useful.